All right, good day. In this video, probability question. Now, the question is that at a supermarket, the first 350 shoppers one morning bought the following food. Now, 180, the total, right? They bought meat. Now, 226, they bought milk. 170, bought bread. Now, if 92 people bought and milk, 126 bought milk and bread, 76 bought meat and bread, and 50 bought all three items. And we need to represent this information on a Venn diagram. Now, this is the Venn diagram, right? So the first circle is going to be for my What I make it for my meat, this orange circle, the blue circle. What I make it for my bread, and the green circle, I'm gonna make it for my milk. Now, in a case like this, first step you need to represent the number of people who all three things, right? This is the first thing you're gonna plot inside your Venn diagram. Now here they're telling us that 50 bought all three items, right? So I'm gonna first start by plotting the 50 here where all three circles enter. So this is my 50. Now, what is the next step? So step one, you first plot the number of people who bought all three items. Now, what is the second step? Step two, are you going to plot the number of people who bought only two items? Now, here they say if 92 people bought meat and milk, right? So these are the two now focusing on meat and milk. Now, yeah, I'm not going to plot these 92. Yeah, right. So what am I gonna do with this 92? These 92 people who bought in milk, they include those people who bought all three, meat, bread, and milk. So always this number you're given for the two circles, you need to subtract the number of people who bought all three. So in this case, I'm going to say 92 minus 52. And what is it that I'm going to get? I'm going to get 40. And what does this 40 represent? This 40 represents the total number of people who bought meat and milk only, right? So this here is going to be 40. And we're going to do the same for every intersection point. So basically here, let's do the same for the people who bought bread and milk. So here they said 126, they brought bread and milk. So 126 people bought bread and milk. But then remember, this 126 includes those people who bought all three. And I'm only interested in the number of people who bought only bread and milk. So I'm going to subtract my 52, the number of people who bought all three. So you're always going to do this whenever you're plotting these points whereby your two circles intersect. Now, 74. The number of people who bought bread and milk only, they are 74. Now, lastly, they're telling us that 76 people, they brought meat and bread, right? So now we're going to do the same. 76 people who bought meat and bread, they include the people or the number of people who brought all three. So I'm going to subtract this by 52. So 76 minus 50. I'm going to get the number of people who bought meat and bread only, 24. Now, what would be the next step from here? The next step is to plot, right? So let me write my step 3. So remember, step 1, plot the number of people who bought all three items. Step 2, plot the number of people who bought only two items. Now, the last step, it will be plot the number of people who bought only one item, right? So this is the order that you need to go about following. So now we're going to plot the number of people who bought only one item. And how are we going to go about doing that? So we're going to use the totals that we are given. So first, let me start from meat, right? They're telling me that 182 people bought meat. Now, this simply means that when I add all these numbers in my meat circle, I expect them to be 182, right? Now, this, I'm going to represent it here. So I'm going to say, okay, 182 minus every value in my circle, minus 50, minus 24, minus 40. Now, this would give me the total number of people who bought meat only, which is going to be 60, right? Remember, I said 182 minus the 24, which is for people who bought meat and bread only, minus the 40, which is the number of people who bought meat and milk, and lastly minus the 50. And as a result, this gave me the number of people who bought meat only, 66. Now you're going to do the same for every other circle. Now let's do for milk. So here we're told that 226 people bought milk, right? So to find the total number of people who bought milk only, I'm going to say 226 minus the 52, which is for all three, minus the 74, which is the number of people who bought milk and bread, minus the 40, which is the total number of people who bought meat and milk. So punching that into my calculator, the number of people who bought milk only is going to be equals to, and lastly, doing the same for bread. I'm told that 170 people in total they bought bread. So to find the number of people who bought bread only, what I say 170 minus the 52, which is for all three, minus the 24 is for people who bought meat and bread, minus the 74, which is for the people who bought bread and milk. Now, punching that into my calculator, the number of people who bought the number of people who bought bread only they're going to be equals to 20. Right. And now to confirm if this Venn diagram is correct, when I add all these numbers here, they should be equals to 350. Now, what if I add all of them and maybe they are equals to 340? It means that the 10, it will be the number of people who didn't buy any of the three, which would be my sample space here, right? So now let me just add all these values at my circle to see if they're going to be equals to the 350. And remember, if they do not, the difference between 350 and that number would be your sample space. Now, adding all the values inside your Venn diagram, they should be equals to 336. Remember, the total number of people must be 350, meaning that in total our Venn diagram should be having 350 people. Now, what is the difference between 350 and the 336? This is 14. And what would be 14? 14 would be the number of people who didn't buy any of the three, which should be outside your circles. And now, as a result, this would be your complete Venn diagram. Now, answering this preceding question, find with the use of your Venn diagram the probability of shoppers chosen at random. Now, remember your probability formula. Remember in this Venn diagram here, this shows the number of people. But to find the probability, right, we're going to make use of this formula. Let me just erase here on the side. So your probability, what you want over the total number of outcomes, right? Total number of possible outcomes, right? So now here, 7.2, we want the probabilities that, okay, those people who bought bread but not meat or milk. So now let me go about doing that. So here, I want the probability for those people who bought bread but not the meat or the milk. So here, the number of people who bought bread only, there are 20. So to calculate my probability for 7.2, I'm going to say 20 divided by my total is 350. And this is going to give me the probability of those people who brought bread but not meat or milk. So 20 divided by 350, my probability would be equals to 0.05. Or rounding it off to two decimals is going to be 0.06. Now, the probability of those who bought meat or milk. Now, calculating the probability of those who bought meat or milk. Now, first, what is my total for my meat, right? So my total for my meat is 180. Plus, what is the total for my milk? 226. Remember, my overall total is 360. Now, what is it that I'm going to subtract on these values? This is my total for meat and milk. I'm going to subtract the probability of those, because remember, the question says meat or milk, right? Meaning that any of these two, one of these two, I'm going to subtract this probability of meat and milk, right? Because remember, these 40 people are the number of people who bought meat and milk only, right? So these people, they bought the two, and I'm going to subtract them here because here we're looking for the number of people who only bought one of these two. So minus the 40. Same applies. We're going to subtract those people who bought all the three items, right? Meat, bread, and milk, right? I'm going to subtract the 50. Now, my remaining, it would give me the total number of people who either bought meat or milk, right? Remember, even though they bought bread, it's fine. But then, because why? Here, our question is says it's either you're going to buy meat or milk, right? So it must be between these two, right? So as a result, these number of people which are here, there are some people who bought bread, right? But then the question didn't ask us to exclude them. So now, as a result, And now punching this into my calculator, this would be 360 over 350. And punching that into my calculator, this should be 0.90. What about the probability of those people who brought bread and milk but no meat? Right? So here, basically, they're telling us to calculate the probability of those people who bought bread and milk only, right? Which would be their number is 74. So to calculate that probability, I'm going to say 74 divided by 350 is my total. And in this case, my probability would be 0.21. So the probability of people who bought meat or bread but no milk, right? So first, I'm going to try and identify the number of people who bought meat only plus the number of people who bought bread only, which is 20, plus the number of people who bought meat and bread only, which is 24. Because remember, these people must exclude the people who bought milk, right? Or anyone who bought milk. So now it's the people who bought meat only, the people who bought bread only, and the people who bought meat and bread only. So as a result, 66 plus 20 plus 24, this would be equals to 110. I'm going to take my 110 divided by my total, which is 350. And as a result, my probability would be equals to 0.31. Now, the probability of those who bought none of these specified items. Now, how many people bought none of these specified items? There are 14. So I'm going to say my 14 divided by my total of 350 people. So I'm going to get the probability of those people who bought none of the specified items. So 14 divided by 350, this would be equals to 0.04. And that will be all for this question. Remember, if ever you have any questions, always feel free to